Hello, anybody who's watching this, welcome to my reaction to Brigador review by MandaloreGaming. Hopefully that just Mandalore, just simple, and I pronounce it correctly. This video was recommended to me by somebody in the comments, and also the whole channel was recommended to me by somebody else, so it's kind of a double recommendation reaction. When the channel was recommended, it was said that it's more of not as memey, more serious review, and then the other one was just the specific Brigador video. So I thought if I'm gonna do a reaction to this channel, why not start with something I was recommended? Yeah. Now, if you have a recommendation for me, you can leave it in the comments below, which I might react to. I don't know. The choice will come to me if I'm curious enough or not. But if you're gonna use my donation link in the description below, I'm definitely gonna react to it. Unless I've seen the video already, but then we'll talk and decide what to do next. Anyway, let's begin.
Raid winter is in.
Okay.
Solo build rate must fall.
Looks like fun.
Welcome, Brigador.
Welcome, Brigador. MandaloreGaming.
Brigador is a wonderful game. It was largely written off at release, and today maybe that can be fixed a bit. Brigador is a real-time tactical mech game, but even calling it a mech game is debatable since you could ride around in tanks or in anti-gravity vehicles. The game takes place in the Outer Rim planet of Novo Solo on its biggest city, Solo Nobre. It's essentially a space banana republic with all the fun things get attached to those. It was founded as a corporate mining colony, but taken over in a revolution by the enigmatic Great Leader. It's been many years, and now Great Leader is dead. The very night he dies, the original company offers contracts to warriors living on Solo Nobre. Destroy targets of interest and pave the way for a corporate invasion to retake the planet. Brigador has a story campaign with a very useful tutorial built right in. As far as the story itself goes, it's mainly a backdrop and you are safe to ignore it. That doesn't mean there's nothing worthwhile in it, but I'll come back to that much later. The freelance missions may be the heart of the game, but it is worth going through the campaign once. Like, yeah, no shit, the tutorial's a big help. But campaign missions make you choose between a few preset loadouts for each mission, so you'll get to try tons of vehicles and weapons to find what you like. Though since we are on tutorial stuff already, I should mention the controls. You want to change them. Immediately, I'd say immediately. So here's why. Glancing at early gameplay trailers, you might think that this was a twin-stick shooter, and it wasn't. But if you fire it up now, it plays a lot like one, so what happened? Well, Brigador is actually designed around tank controls, which are relative to the vehicle. The current default is screen absolute. That means pressing forward always sends you towards the top of the screen, and all movement directions are relative to the screen. This does make it easier to pick up and play for the first time. However, Brigador has a lot of nuances that'll hurt you in the long run if you do this. Screen absolute means you don't need to think about where your vehicle is facing that much, which is a bad idea when the game has a directional damage system. Shots in the rear hurt more and you're training yourself to walk ass backwards without even thinking about it. Beyond that, not every mech has a top that can spin around like a tank. So turning around on screen absolute means you might go in a direction you didn't want and you end up fighting with the controls. The tank scheme can be trickier and make your first half hour or so awkward, but in the long run, it's well worth it. Of course, it can be set for a per vehicle basis, so if the speed of some of the anti-gravity A-grav vehicles is too much for you, you can keep that on screen absolute. Well, if tank controls are the chosen way, how come the other one is the default? It's because players saw the trailer, thought it'd be a twin-stick shooter, bought it, and when it wasn't, they refunded it. The developers then released the free Up Armored Edition update. It had new missions, maps, mechs, and pilots, but also included the new control scheme. Well, it was always there, but now it's the default. So why change what you designed? Well, it didn't sell well. At all.
So the interesting thing about that trailer is that it's a very good trailer for a different game.
No, stop it. That was a great trailer. Please stop feeling bad. Okay, control disclaimer out of the way. Let's talk about the look of Brigador. Because not only is it a gorgeous, crisp-looking 2D game, everything blows up. Every single thing. Just looking at the maps give me that same warm, fuzzy feeling I have looking at something like Tiberian Sun. Most of the maps are dark, but accented by really unusual colors and lights. If you're into cyberpunk cityscapes, I'd wager you're gonna like the look of things. I mean, what war cemetery would be complete without a strip club in the middle of it? The sheer amount of art assets and details all these maps have just blows my mind. Then you can knock everything down and see even the debris has a lot of care put into it. There's an art to destruction, and it's being mastered here. There's even an official game
pretty
speed
cool.
option if you want to see all the destruction in super slow-mo. So the levels are wonderfully unique and detailed, whether they're intact or not. But then we have all the vehicles. Brigador has nearly 60 playable ones, so that's not even counting all the enemy-only vehicles. Please, let me drive the Leviathan. I would do terrible things to drive the Leviathan. But anyway, while the mechs and vehicles may look 3D, they're actually 2D. The original models have been baked down to two-dimensional sprites from a ton of different angles, so they keep all that 3D detail but don't look out of place in a 2D world. There's a huge variety of vehicles, and the factions have excellent visual theming. The conflict for Solo Nobre has 3 major players. First, you have the Loyalists, which are the remnants of Great Leader's regime. These are your traditional, practical, and professional military weapons. If it looks angular, competent, and designed to kill, chances are it's the Loyalist vehicle. Then you contrast that with the Corvid Rebels. Imagine an entire bad neighborhood getting up, walking to yours, then punching you in the face for trying to bring out the garbage. And I don't mean the people, I mean the real estate. Corvid mechs are cars, farming equipment, and other junk that are somehow going toe-to-toe with military machines. Tanks that lose to a tractor, or a party van. Or the treehouse, which is just a mobile junkyard. The thing is just so tall that it can fire over anything but the steepest cover. This thing has a shield generator, it's hard to knock down. Also, it has the best horn in the game. Using the horn is very important to establish dominance, remember that.
It's a
I
horn?
can happily report the party van does live up to its name, though it is hard to control holding the horn down, that's just part of the challenge. Last up are the Spacers, hedonistic raiders who spend near all their time in zero-G. If it looks aerodynamic or like a moon rover or really any other kind of 70s or 80s idea of space exploration, there's a good chance it belongs to the natural matter-fearing nerds. When they're not living out their psychotic fantasies in space, they're attacking human colonies. As we all know, living in debauchery requires adequate funding. They're incredibly different groups. No unit type is shared between the factions, so let me give an example. I can't think of anything better than the suicide enemies.
I love a crowd.
Oh,
The Loyalists, being the semi-professional army they are, have repurposed starship torpedoes to lob at you. They may be slow, but they'll also never stop hunting you down. The Spacers have cloaking swarms of autonomous drones for the job. They're more technologically advanced, so more likely to catch you, but they won't do the same explosion that a torpedo would. So that just leaves the Corvid Rebels. They go with the more organic, DIY solution. They charge at you with spicy TI-83s, so you need to be a little bit more cautious approaching a crowd. I don't want to get into gameplay too much yet, but yeah, it is a great looking game. It nails a unique retro future style with really sharp looking graphics. And if you thought the visuals were good, wait till you get to the music.
oh. Reminds me of something like it. Hotline Miami? Maybe. It's a bit simplistic, which works with the graphics a lot.
There would be times when I just stopped
play
my
or
tracks
win,
and
if you
listened
will.
to the music. It's all done by Makeup and Vanity Set, and there's some top-tier synth and electronic music in it. Tracks can range from being calming and ethereal in between missions, which are reminiscent of something like Vangelis, but then you'll be in a fight and you'll have like this 80s synth center stage song kick in. Then it feels like playing an action scene in a peak John Carpenter movie. That's not to say the music is derivative, because it really stands out on its own. It's 80s, Miami Vice, synthwave, cyberpunk. I don't know, but I want to get it on vinyl. The music isn't being used to hide shoddy sound effects either, because the combat soundscape is also wonderful. Every so often the music slows
You can
down,
see
you
it,
can
but
really
there are
appreciate
vinyls
it.
over there.
Or you die.
Even though I don't have it. There in my basement.
If you have really nice speakers or headphones, you're going to get a lot of mileage out of it. You know how a lot of people will say that the new Doom game's like a playable heavy metal album? Well, in that same vein,
Yeah.
Brigador's a playable electronic album.
Why is everything just
So, in short, it is some kick-ass presentation. It's hard to do it justice so briefly. So now let's actually talk about the game and how it's the ultimate stress ball. Some mech games can be about the horror and futility of war and how it harms innocent civilians, the true costs of human life. In Brigador, if you step on a civilian, you get $50. As I mentioned before, everything in the game can be shredded. You're paid for everything you break, which isn't always a lot, but you get paid. There's no such thing as a collateral damage penalty here, everything is free game. Of course, your primary objective and payouts don't come from blowing up Grandpa's gas station. The company wants the planet back even if it's barren, so that means taking down strategic targets. You have the orbital guns that take down encroaching spacecraft, the substations for the power grid. You get the idea, there's no revolution without property damage. Missions always have primary targets for atom rearrangement, but there will typically be many bonus targets around for you to break. That means more fights and more danger since you can't save in a mission, but you get a higher payout. More money means more stuff to buy for freelance missions. You can get new vehicles, new weapons and equipment, or a new mission contract. There are a huge amount of pilots to grab as well, and playing as them will modify the missions. While a campaign mission is just that, a mission, a freelance contract might have 1 or 3 or 5 or 7 or 39 missions in it, so a pilot can affect how much harder the missions get between each other and the max payout. The final step is going on the precursor James Wild ride, maximum payout for maximum suffering. That closed casket special is no joke. Or you can sit back, relax, and tear up the town with a man who wears a paper plate for a mask. It's all satisfying, and it comes from
That's
how
what
polished
that is.
controlling your vehicle is. It's fast and responsive even on the larger vehicles, and you always have a lot of room to look around. But you still have that weightiness of it being a big war machine. Like the weapons occasionally pushing your big walker back. You do move fast, but once you're firing, you have to push through your own recoil. There are so many vehicles to master and so many different weapons you can put on. Sure, you have the traditional big cannon or continuous energy beam or machine gun, but you have more unusual ones too. You've got cluster mortars that can clear out an entire street with a single shot, railguns that can punch through all kinds of surfaces, the gamma rays that in the cannon cause super cancer, or how about the corrosive gas canister launchers? And this is just a few of the weapons, you still have the special equipment on top of that. There's a sonic audiokinetic pulse that'll just flatten anything in a cone. There's an EMP launcher which shuts down the enemies and the entire city block. You get the idea, there's a ton to play around with. It should be no surprise that the combat's a ton of fun. Even using the quote-unquote
seems
mundane
fun.
weapons is still great to play. When shots rip through enemies and everything around them, it's hard not to have a good time. But you don't always have to go in guns blazing. You can also try a sneaky approach. Stealth and the noise you make is a big part of the game. I mean, it's a real-time tactic game after all. All the enemies on the map don't just swarm to you while you kill them. If you're out of the enemy line of sight, they'll be on patrol or stay parked. But if you have a very loud weapon or blow up something like, say, an ammo depot, then they'll all come running to see what the noise was. So a big vehicle with big weapons will pull in a lot of enemies when it fires off, while smaller vehicles are quieter and can hide behind buildings. Quiet weapons means you can bamboozle the enemy by blowing up a fuel line and they'll all run over to investigate it. Then you can go after your real targets. For combat, it's nice to line up a vulnerable flank or rear shot, but there's also an alarm system to the game. This can make playing as a small vehicle living hell if you're not careful. There are many spotter types of enemies, and if they see you, they'll start to call in an alarm. You only have a few seconds to kill them before it goes through, so your best bet is to kill them before they see you. Alternatively, you can take down communication towers. That'll put their phone call on Time Warner hell for longer. He doesn't know. He doesn't know. If you do get caught, your life becomes a lot harder. All enemies on the map, including parked ones, will activate their shield generators. Then a horde of enemies will start beelining it to you. While all of this is happening, giant walls and security barricades will activate. They even lower down to let enemies through, just to really rub it in. They're gonna stick around too, at least until you blow up the district substations. So why would you ever be a dinky suit of power armor over a walking war crime? Well, pilots aren't the only thing with multipliers around here. The tinier and more pathetic your ride is, the higher the cash payout. So when you go, is that an auto rickshaw? Why is it so expensive? This thing is a death trap, why would anybody— oh. Risk and reward. A string of freelance missions is a bit similar to a roguelike. By that I mean there's enemy randomization and a few things get moved around here and there. More importantly, if you die, you lose nearly all your earnings up to that point. So you need to properly and calmly exit the human rights disaster zone. When you're playing between these districts, you don't regenerate your hull, shields, or ammunition. You can collect shields from fallen enemies, and every so often they'll drop ammunition as well. Shields from enemies are reliable, but for ammo you might need to stop by a depot, which is also a target. But your structure? She's never coming back. So sometimes you make a choice. If you're low, you go to a district with a spaceport and try to escape early, or you keep going and hope for that big payday. There are solid mechanics here. So what's wrong with it? I don't know how to put it, but basically nothing. I mean, there's one mission from the campaign where you're supposed to have no ammo, but when you play it in freelance, you do have ammo, but that's more of a bug or an oversight. You might think it's a grindy game, but it's not. If anything, it's remarkably generous and you can get what you want pretty fast. All the usual suspects that would plague a game like this are nowhere to be found. I have no real problems with Brigador. That said, I can definitely see where some things could be improved. The pilots are cool, but I wish they had more quirks. I don't know, like maybe one can turn really fast, or they go in high-speed reverse, or maybe they don't reverse at all because they're not a coward. How about every enemy is a suicide
That would
enemy
be
but
cool.
double speed and health? You know, just a bunch of new modifiers to make replaying a mission more interesting or fun. There's more to
Yeah.
add, but speaking of interesting, let's talk about the writing a bit.
Chapter 1. The hissing of pistons, the whine of servos. Armor-shod feet rhythmically stomping, weighed down by the brute power of a railgun. All of these were things he enjoyed. The Buckmaster.
Okay, you might expect the writing to be really basic fluff, but no. There's lore. There's a lot of lore. The story driving the campaign is bare, that's fine. I'd even say that's expected for a game like this. Yet the
Yeah.
writing and world building is so well thought out and well realized that it blows my mind. Like, what is this doing here? Most of the writing comes from the views of in-universe characters, so you're also getting interesting perspectives on everything. Lore tidbits are one of the things you pay for, and I'd actually say they're worth it. It's strange because I wouldn't normally say a game like this needs more story, but what is here in such a dry state is so good that it makes me wish there was more. I don't think the sequel needs elaborate cutscenes or anything like that. It would be cool to have some of that rustic, home-style Ace Combat chatter, though.
Turn back, Brigador, or be destroyed by those loyal to great leader.
Just for the campaign, let you hear people lose their shit over the radio. I should probably mention that the sequel isn't hypothetical. Brigador Killers is coming eventually, but it might need help. As I said before, this game failed to launch. But Brigador has still been getting completely free updates for years. And somehow, they're getting started again. This has killed me inside, so there are some special circumstances here. First of all, I contacted the Polish Information Network. It'll be 60% off the entire weekend through the pinned link. The second part I'm only going to ask sparingly, because the last time I did, the results were downright terrifying.
That's what
But if
you
you bought Brigador and liked it, leave a positive review on wherever you bought it from. This ain't a review bomb, it's a review boom. So that about does.
Apologies for the intrusion, but the connection past the core systems is dog shit, and there's no telling how long it'll be before my
Now I see why somebody recommended the Brigador specifically. Seth is here too. Alright.
signal fries on these third world computer parts. Brigador is truly a great game, and I've come only to humbly double endorse it as such. Those of you disappointed in my unusual brevity on it can look forward to a more substantial inspection of the sequel if it actually happens.
There's no telling if the sequel will come because anything can happen. Brigador is a great game, and it's always broken my heart whenever I hear about it. So give it a spin, I highly recommend it. As for the next video, I have some ideas. 4 or 5 of them. Actually, no, I only have one idea. I'll see you then.
Okay. Anything else? Crits. Most powerful horn. Kind of sounds like a hello, hello from the Ferdinand's face. That's the only thing I gathered from the most powerful horn. But anyway, yeah, it looks like a pretty good key. I wish I could speak. Looks like a pretty cool game. Why game? Is my mouth too dry to form syllables? Consonants? Fuck. Anyway, enough about me. It seems like a pretty cool game. There you go. And I might play it. There's more chance that I play this than Star Sector. Star Sector looks way too complex, and this doesn't. Especially if I wouldn't care about the lore in it and play just for distractional purposes. Maybe someday. I don't know if I don't know how cheap it is, and I guess how expensive it is in Russia, and what happens to discounts here too. Because it's a whole different story, but that you don't want to care about. So, thanks anybody who watched this. I hope to see you next time. Goodbye. Have a great life, because one of us has to. Peace.